talking about the stages in meditation, we have immediately linguistic terminological problem. That when we talk about stages, we tend to think in terms of a staircase, that you walk the first step, then you go to the next step, and then after the next step, that numbers appeared in your elevator kiosks, that things were already defined, clarified already. But seem to be the problem here is not so much with that, of stages after stages, of quick steps that you take. Then having taken that particular step, you will advance yourself in upstairs. But we are talking here in terms of process. It is more likely the question of growing and aging process. That although we do celebrate our birthdays, that doesn't mean necessarily that you have suddenly become from being 2 years old to 3 years old, night of your party, as soon as you blow your candle. That was just a hypothetical guesswork that you haven't become 3 years old by then. So there is a process of development takes place, which is precisely the question of meditation practice is concerned. It is not a particular stage, but it is a process that's taking place constantly. And such process can take place also in accordance with your life situation. Traditionally, it was recommended to become a monk or nun. Leave your home, family, relatives. Leave your province. Leave your village. And then join in to another home, which is called a monastery, and become one of the inmates of that particular establishment. But we have a problem here again, that if you left home and if you become inmate of a monastery, another monastery, you are re-establishing yourself as being at home. That has become a problem. That's become the chaotic situations, that you left home but you found another home. Conscience is very powerful there, in your conscience, that you feel you are in a better home because that particular home is divinely, enlighteningly proved home, sanctioned by the Buddhas or the God or whatever. So we have another problem there, and that becomes stage to stage rather than an evolutionary process in spiritual development. Then we have the Indian tradition, Hindu tradition rather, that join as a young man and learn the craftsmanship of your particular trade and worshipping God simultaneously, being a young man and you practicing your craftsmanship and doing your pujas and everything at the same time, evolving, developing, becoming more and more in contact with the reality or God. And finally, when you are ready to resign, that you get a divine pension, that you become a retired old person who is regarded as practically wise, spiritually wise person who then retire and follow your life, and you died in a state of spiritual ecstasy as you get old. There's so many disciplines that we know We'll talk in terms of stages and making a landmark on spirituality, that you take a certain particular vow, discipline from this point onward, that you are a different person. You have your bar mitzvah and you become a manhood or womanhood, and all kinds of things like that, which indicate very deceptively that the process is a sudden one. Once you get your title and a deed goes with your title, then you become a slightly advanced and different person. And from the point of view of true spirituality, that we have to face this problem of misunderstanding, that there is nothing is regarded as sudden jump at all, that there is a gradual process after process taking place constantly. Except in the Vajrayana tradition of Tantra, things work the opposite. But probably we could discuss that later on. But as long as the Mahayana and Hinayana process of spiritual path or style of spiritual path goes, that it's a gradual process. People talk about a sudden enlightenment, sudden glimpse, satori, and all kinds of other things. But even those need conditions for you to pull yourself together, that you are in the right frame of work, frame of mind, to experience such thing. So even so-called sudden enlightenment need preparation to be enough to be sudden. Otherwise you can't be sudden. That if you have a sudden accident in your motor car, you got to driving your car, otherwise you can't have an accident. So that's the basic whole point of that. Whatever we talk about in suddenness, a sudden flash of all kinds, we are talking in terms of conditional suddenness, conditional sudden enlightenment, which is dependent on slow growth of the spiritual process of commitment and of discipline and of experience, not only in the sitting practice alone, but we are also talking about a lifelong experience, dealing with your wife, your husband, your kids, your parents, your job, your money, your sex life, your aggressive life, whatever you have. That dealing with everything that we have and working with them and learning from those situations. So therefore the gradual process is almost inevitable. And almost at this point we could say quite safely, scholastically, experientially, we could say quite safely that there's no such thing as sudden enlightenment in the Buddhism at all. So-called sudden enlightenment is understanding which depends on the process that we have experienced already. So therefore it is called sudden. You could say that there is a suddenly I saw the sun rising, suddenly I saw the sunset, but that is dependent on the situation and you are making more dramatic than necessary. Sun doesn't rise suddenly or set suddenly. And maybe you have noticed that's going to happen. That depends on your own experience of that. Point here is that there is a continuity in the spiritual journey, that you begin very solidly and you progress very solidly and you evolve yourself very solidly. So the things we are talking about, or we've been told of magical zap, so to speak, is a purely mythical one, ladies and gentlemen. And the zap cannot take place unless you are in that situation to be zapped, which makes automatically the zapping is a gradual process rather than sudden experience. So, at this point, what I'm trying to say here in the spiritual path generally is I'm saying that don't expect supernormal magic of any kind, anything. Some of you might have experienced that kind of magic, maybe so. And some of you have read about such magic does exist, used to exist, or did exist, does exist, will exist, whatever. But, however, magic doesn't exist. The magic depends on the magician, and the magician depends on the trainers of the magicians. So magic can't appear unless there's a magical situation. And no one can save us from state of chaos unless we understood what does mean by chaos and confusion. Unless we suffered from it. Otherwise, the chaos doesn't become chaos because we don't notice it. So once you begin to notice it, you're already on the path, that you begin to feel uncomfortable and nuisance, that something's bugging you constantly. You're already in the chaos, but you're already taking a slow journey. So the spiritual progress, the spiritual path, the development that we're talking at this point is a gradual process, so-called sudden enlightenment is a purely definition in language and the concept rather than really something taking place. Spiritual journey. One of the fundamental important points that we should understand is that a journey, so-called journey we're making, the so-called spirituality we are talking about, fundamentally it is based on nothing to do with the spirit. And the spiritual is self-existing healthiness that every one of us possess. That we are not talking about the mythical concept of God, or we are not talking in terms of divine power that we can't understand, but we got to accept it. But we are talking about something that's very literal and real, that the spiritual journey can only take place if we begin to make ourselves available to the path to begin with. And such process takes place, such as like Shamatha experience in the Hinayana level, slow process of mindfulness, which allows ourselves to be available to ourselves before we become missionaries or social workers, whatever you have. In the bodhisattva level or the tantric level, whatever we have, or conventional level, that we have to start, as we discussed the other day, that we have to realize ourselves and to pull ourselves together, that the first step of being a social worker or preacher is make sure that we don't become nuisance to others, that we don't make nuisance to others. And that is the starting point, is that we don't make nuisance to others, is the Shamatha practice of meditation, in which that we begin to catch ourselves being nuisance to ourselves. We find all kinds of thought problems, all kinds of emotional hang-ups, all kinds of physical sitting practices, problems of all kinds. And we are somewhat dubious to our technique that was given to us. And we are making nuisance to ourselves, let alone not make a nuisance to somebody else. So we are nuisance to ourselves. We get angry to ourselves by saying that I could do better than this. What's wrong with me? It seems I'm getting worse, I'm going backward. And you're angry at every world, all world, including yourself. That everything you see is an expression of insult. That the universe becomes expression of insult at once. And one has to relate with that to begin with. If you begin to exert your power and energy to the path, that one has to face that particular fact, that you're going to work with yourself. Having understood or realized that the first step is to make sure that you can make friends with yourself, is the motto of Shamatha experience, is that you realize that you made a friend with yourself, that you have accepted, acknowledged, and you begin to work with subconscious gossip, fantasize dreams, and everything that you learn yourself. Come back to the technique of awareness of the breathing, which is being taught by the Buddha. And then, having made friends with yourself, you begin to realize sense of relief and a sense of excitement, but at the same time, one should be very careful not to get excited, overly excited, that there's still your schoolboy. If your homework, last night's homework is good, that doesn't mean to say you're out of the school altogether. You got to come back to your class, you got to work with your teacher, you got to do more homework, because you are more successful, you are very good at, which demands more pressure and attention on you. And you are not quite yet to quit your school. You got to come back, you got to work. And the next process is what's known as Vipassana experience, which is a sense of awareness, fundamental awareness, which is to say that awareness which acknowledges the boundaries of non-awareness, boundaries of wandering mind, and begin to acknowledge that situation. And once you begin to realize the boundary that your awareness is taking place, and your mindless, your confusion is taking place, one begin to realize that. But however, you don't make a big deal about that particularly, but you accept the whole thing as part of the basic awareness, that not only you be aware of your breath, not only you be aware of your posture, your thought process, but you are fundamentally aware, fundamentally mindful and aware. In the basic that there's some sense of totality is taking place, that you're aware of the room, you're aware of your rug, you're aware of your zafu, you're aware of what color of hair you have, and you're aware of what you did before you came to sitting practice, and you'll be constantly aware of those things. But then there is non-verbal awareness, non-conceptual awareness, which doesn't talk terms, or doesn't relate to the terms of facts and figures. What time you came here and said meditate, but you have a basic, general, abstract level of awareness, that being, sense of being, and sense of this is taking place. In fact, something's happening right here. Sense of being, sense of experience without word, without terms, without a concept, without a verbalization or without a visualization, but sense of being is taking place. And that is unnameable. And we can't call it consciousness exactly. Whereas if you are conscious, you begin to relate with the inputs, how much you're getting in, how much you're not able to get in. We can't even call it awareness, which is sometimes a misunderstanding. That is not quite awareness, it's a state of being. Being what? One never knows. It's just a being without anything. Are you being Jack? Are you being Jill? Are you being Smith? One never knows. But it's not as vague as that, but within the state of vagueness, of uncertainty, there is a very strong energy, very powerful. Something is taking place, something's happening. There's a shock, there's electricness of pulled back in the presence constantly. Here, here, here. It's happening. It's really taking place. So it's not as vague as we expected, but actually it's happening. Which is a very interesting dichotomy there, that on the other hand, not knowing what it is all about, but on the other hand, there's enormous precision and understanding. Very directness is taking place, which is a state of vipassana, state of realization in terms of insight, that you begin to see inside of your mind in the level of non-verbal awareness. Non-verbal cognitive mind is functioning, which is the state of vipassana, is non-verbal cognitive mind is functioning. It is non-verbal, non-conceptual, because you can't say, I now hear the traffic, I now hear the cuckoo clock, or I now hear my wristwatch is clicking, I now hear my wife is yelling at me. But I hear, but I don't hear at the same time. This totality is taking place with a very precise something or other is happening. That it is very electric, but on the other hand, it's not particular ecstasy. No, it is state of dullness, but state of here-ness is taking place, which is described in the Tibetan Buddhist literatures is now-ness. Now-ness. Sometimes that state is referred as the fourth moment. That sounds maybe more mystical than what it meant. The fourth moment is being you have past, present, and future are three moments. Then you have something else taking place, which is called a fourth moment. And the fourth moment is not particularly far-out experience or extraordinary as such, but it is a state of that such experience doesn't belong to now even, or that at all, or doesn't belong to my be experience, but it belongs to non-category, which provides another sense of category. That's why it is called the fourth moment. That is the state of vipassana, or the state of non-ego. In Tibetan term, it's called Laktong Damgitok Vishirap, which means that the knowledge of egoless and insight. It's a very real experience. That nothing can be misunderstood by this, that it is so overwhelming experience that the experience coming at you, in fact, at some point, once you have a sense of perspective experience coming at you, you are experiencing it precisely in great detail. And from that point of view, then you are able to work with yourself, your life situation, your everyday life situations, because that there is a constant reminder is taking place in everyday life. All kinds of little hassles. You forgot to pay the telephone bill. And the message from the bell company is becoming heavier and heavier. Just about to see you. That our motorcycle is just about to catch fire because you're overextending its power. That your grandmother is dying. There is a further need for commitment, family heritage, parental relationships calling for your attention that you can't afford to forget. All kinds of past reminders and present reminders happening at once. There is a state of turmoil, problematic situations happening constantly. But if you look at it closely, where the problem came from, what is all this about? You begin to experience the fourth moment. The problem comes and problem goes, but still remains problematic. That is the state of fourth moment, is that a problem remains as a problem, that nothing dissolves into a lovely, lighty, beautiful, creamy, honey, lotus lake. And it remains still potent, slightly painful, sour, as if the universe is staring at you. The world is looking at you with a disapproving look. that you haven't been quite good or enlightened as you should be, some disapproval look that the world does. When the sun shines, it looks at you. When the cock cries, crock-a-doodle-doo, it says the same thing. When the motor car honks outside your house, it says the same thing. When your telephone rings, it says the same thing. There's ironic mockeries taking place all over the place. It's not that the devil is against you and therefore trying to destroy you, or some magicians have put spell on you, therefore they can't get at you. But the world is constantly, very powerfully, in its very subtle way, trying to remind you that you should remember your fourth moment. The fourth moment. That's what's happening. In the level of Vipassana experience, that experience becomes very real, very precise, and it transcends even reference work on the reference point on the doctrine that you are practicing Buddhism, you're practicing Hinduism. But you're practicing life. And in fact, ironically, you begin to find that you can't escape and life is practicing you. And it becomes very real and very obvious. And that is a very, very important starting point or state of processing, evolving oneself, that you begin to realize that you are on the path, that everything what happens in your life is to begin to haunt you. Sometimes the haunting process takes pleasurable confirmation, and sometimes painful, threatening of all kinds. That there is some kind of a ghost is haunting you all the time, which you can't get rid of. You can't even call the Catholics to exercise. State of insight, fourth moment, experience, as well as state of being haunted, taking place simultaneously. That's an interesting place to be, that you might feel that you are sitting and camping on the razor's edge, making campfires quite happily, but knowing that you are on the razor's edge, that you can't quite settle down and relax in and build your campfire, but one still does it. And that state of hauntedness is a state of ego, actually. That there's somebody in your family, in your part of a being, is to begin to complain you that somebody's getting uncomfortable messages. In other words, that state of awareness of fourth moment that we talked about in the Vipassana experience cannot be materialized unless that there is a slight tinge of being haunted by your own ego. The hauntedness and the sense of insight both work together, which builds the experience. Experience cannot be happening unless there is a black and white taking place, a sweet and a sour working together. Otherwise, it becomes no experience. You're just absorbed into the sweet, or you're just absorbed into the sour. So you have no way of working at all. So, on the whole, that we should regard our practice and experience on the path is experiential rather than stages on the path, that now you're on that particular program, and now next thing you're on another kind of program, and on July the 4th that you have decided to change your program into something else. September the 2nd, you're now on to something else. You go to the first booming or the second booming. You're on the Vipassana training now. On July the 10th, you're going to be on the Vipassana training. And somehow things doesn't work that way. And a lot of teachers try to institute such techniques and failed. A lot of students trying to put themselves so that they know where they're at, so to speak, as we usually say. And they also failed. So we have no way of knowing where we are, how we're going. As far as computerized demand is concerned. But we know we are on some journey. That journey takes place, that journey takes time and experience. So the experience, when we talk about, we should be very careful on that term, experience. What you experience, what you're experiencing. Experience, traditionally speaking, works that you have an idea and expectation. You have some kind of pre-warning as to idea might be. Somebody told you and you might know roughly, and you prepare for it. This particular experience might come to you, and then you wait for it. You do as better as you could. You exert yourself, and then you have the experience. Everything's absolutely predictable. But when we're talking about this case and experience is concerned, we are not talking about a programmed, predicted experience as such. We are talking purely in terms of experience which come from the unconscious mind, that you begin to feel like if you have a cold shower and suddenly it's turning into hot, burning water coming out of it. It's so instant, it's so real, that for a moment when you have the hot water coming at you, you still think it's cold. Then you begin to feel something is not quite right with that particular coldness. It begins to burn you. It's unprogrammed experience. It's like that. Nothing is a particular experience in terms of expectations, but it's like turning hot water and cold water simultaneously experiencing in a certain individuality. Maybe we could stop there and discussion.
Could you please explain the difference between the present and the fourth moment?
Present is the third moment that you are being there. Like when we talk about I could feel your presence. You could feel the presence of the light being switched on. Now there's no darkness. It is some sense of security of some kind, that you know where you are. That you keep your flashlight in your pocket if you run into darkness. and suddenly you take it out and flash it where you're going. You feel enormous relief created by that little spot of light that it created in front of you, although you don't see the whole thing, but you feel the sense of present, of existence, of having flashlight and lit and able to see where you're at, where you're going about. And the fourth moment seemed to be a state of totality in some sense, that there is a basic awareness taking place which doesn't need particular reassurance as such, but it's happening. It's there that you feel the totality. You not only see the flashlight beam, but you see the space around you at the same time. It's a much larger version of the third moment.
When you're talking about when you reach a state where the world is looking at you, you're just there and life is living you.
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
The way you're talking about life lives you, life does you, you don't do the practice so much more that life does you. Werner Erhard talks about you being the creator of your life, you creating all of your life around you, you creating all of the events in your life to happen. Is there any dichotomy in those two things?
Well, the whole thing is saying exactly the same thing.
Same thing?
But trying to sort out who's who, which is which, what is what, is a problem that we run into constantly. And particularly psychotherapeutic world, that you sort out where things went wrong. That you had a spider in your crib, which might be the problem of your whole personality, and somehow it doesn't work. And it had to be a experiential, non-educational, in fact, experiential. That as soon as we begin to work in terms of that this process is the educational process for you, and then we begin to view it entirely different angle, and we have enormous misunderstanding.
Is it necessary first to conquer the emotions in order to allow the fourth moment experience to exist?
We are not talking about a battle at this point. You see, the fourth moment exists with the emotion as well as independent of emotions. The fourth moment can only exist if we view the situation as personal experience, very personal experience. Like you have lost your temper, your anger with somebody who did dirty tricks on you, you dislike that person enormously, and the only evidence that you hate that person is a series of concepts, ideas. He did that to me, he did this to me, I did that to him, but he did that to me on the other hand. we have become very verbal, conceptual, that in fact we have no idea why we're angry at all that person if we don't have those logics proving us facts and figures. But what we're talking here is that you could experience such anger in a very personal level, abstract, very personal level, that we don't have to borrow the ideas of facts and figures or the proofs of anything, but anger exists by itself. Awareness of fourth moment exists by itself. It doesn't need any logical proof, definition of that was the cause of my fourth moment experience, or this was the experience of that. But it's very personal. That's why it sounds very vague to explain. But in fact, when you experience, it's very powerful and not at all vague. So we have no word for that, no explanations for that. But it is very definite experience. It's experience without label of experience. Can you make anything out of that?
Well, it just seems to me that when the emotions, such as anger, the example you're using, that the anger would take over and there would be no possibility for fourth moment because of discursiveness of the thoughts that go on, like you said.
I mean, that's the problem. That one of the problems that we begin to feel that our anger or our passion will take us over. So we have no existence. That's why we feel some sense of ego trip, that we want to be the center of the attention rather than my anger taking me over. And there's a big misunderstanding about that. Not knowing anger is part of you, really, properly, fully. And once you begin to realize anger or passion or whatever, lust, begin to realize they're part of you. The reason why it is a part of you is because there's a very close link with your emotions and yourself. That you don't have to resort yourself to explaining yourself that how I was angry because somebody did a terrible thing on me. That was very superficial. But there's something very real than that is taking place. There's a whole mystical experience taking place when you lost temper, when you state of the lust. There's a real mystical experience which is unnameable but very real and reminds you of your true self constantly, which is extremely powerful, and if I could use such word, it's very beautiful. And we have to experience that particular thing rather than trying to grope around, how can I solve my problem with my divorced husband, he annoys me, Those little crude examples tend to become simply just another cage.
Thank you.
Welcome.
The question about Werner Erhard saying that you are the creator of your life, of your universe. Your reply to that, where you said it's the same thing.
Who said that?
Werner Erhard, is that his name?
Yeah.
The quotation from him that was brought up, that you are the creator of your own life, and your reply was that's the same thing as life is living you. I didn't understand your reply to that question. Which you is it that is the creator of your own life? And you used the word true self in reply to the last question. Is that, all right, that you that Warner's talking about is the true self that you're speaking of, but I still didn't understand your reply to the question.
It's very clear, extremely clear.
What?
Extremely clear. It's very obvious that we are not talking about particular personality, particular you, but we are talking about which you. We're not talking about you, but we're talking about that which. It's not a question. The problem is not on the which. The problem is not on the you, but the problem is on the which. And we are talking about the which.
I'll work with that.
Rinpoche, in ending your talk, you mentioned the analogy of the person taking a shower whose water suddenly turns burning, and at first they don't recognize it and then do. And I'd like to understand that better. Are you saying that there's a moment when your comfortable situation suddenly becomes literally dangerous to you?
Not necessarily. I think it's what I'm talking about is naivety, that there isn't enough intelligence taking place. But you'll be accepting things that, you turn on a cold shower because you feel hot, and hopefully everything's going to be okay. But then there's a little twist takes place. It's naivety, in the sense of the naivety is in fact the basis of spiritual materialism. And naivety is the believing in something which doesn't exist, and a sense of stupidity. And I'm talking about naivety at this point, that you make sure that everything's okay, but then you just give in. There's no reminder is prepared for anything. And whenever there's a reminder, which is part of the fourth moment that we were talking about tonight, if there's a reminder, that becomes very real. But if you don't have a reminder, then you are just at the mercy of the chaos, or samsara for that matter.
So the opposite of that attitude would be what?
Is watchfulness, is awareness. Mindfulness to begin with, then awareness as you grow up from the mindfulness. That's why sitting practice is very important. Just boils down to that.
Thank you.
Good luck, madam.
Thank you. You mentioned the concept that there was no sudden jump to spirituality except through Tantra. Wouldn't it be easier if we sort of went into Tantra instead of going through this long process we're struggling to get through?
Well, we have to wait for that. Tantra is the approach from Tantric point of view, or Vajrayana point of view, is very different, and almost using the completely opposite psychological approach. But it is founded on the same psychological approach to begin with. Then you can afford to reverse the whole thing. But I think we're getting into a more complicated area, and I would like to wait for that later on. And we have good understanding of what we're talking about right now, that we have more grasp of where we are at, what we're doing. Then that might be the preparation to understand Tantra.
Thank you.
Bearded gentleman over there.
when you talked about the analogy of the cold shower and all of a sudden the water turns hot, you mentioned that the fourth moment is an unprogrammed experience from the unconscious. Is this unconscious the state of egolessness?
What do you mean by unconscious state of egolessness?
You said this experience, when the water suddenly turns hot, is something that you can't be prepared for. So it comes from the unconscious. Is that a state of...
Well, I don't know where it's come from. It just comes. There's no point where you have to trace back particularly. It's an experiential thing. And it might come from all kinds of things. It can come from God, for one thing. Or Adam and Eve. There's endless things that we could hypothesize. But it doesn't really come from anywhere from Buddhist point of view. That you don't have a God, you don't have Adam and Eve. You are you. So it doesn't come from anywhere. It exists. That's the point. But if you're talking in terms of underlying consciousness or unconscious, that it comes from that abstract state of mind, which is a very literal thinking, state of literal thinking which doesn't have a logic is formulated yet, but just we have a sense of ape instinct. Maybe that's the simplest way to look at it, is the ape instinct that provide that radar instinct.
Thank you.
Can you compare the fourth moment to the idea of the witness?
Idea of what?
Of the witness, somebody inside.
Witness?
Yes.
Well, I don't think so. A witness is intentional. That often a lot of Gujifians talk about witness, awareness, but what we are talking here is not in a sense of, you see, when you witness something, like you witness somebody's signature, which is somebody has signed already and you witness that. It needs two people to work on one project. But in this case, the witness is the same thing. That if you witness something, you have a comparison. But fourth moment is great and personal and fantastic because this doesn't need feedbacks. It just does it by itself. It's like the analogy of a shower, cold and hot shower coming. There's no preparation is involved. But when we talk about a witness, we are talking about a comparison. You have a self-employed professor in the middle of your brain who tells you how the whole thing should be.
Thank you.
Does the path exist in all of the 4 moments and the other way around? Or is the path something else outside of the 4 moments?
Well, path is you. The point is being that if you don't have dry motor car, you can't have highways. Because people be driving motor car, therefore you have a road and highways. It's the same thing. It's an interdependent thing. You exist, therefore path exists. It's very personal. But at the same time, it is very impersonal as well. That a path exists because of you, but on the other hand, on your path, a lot of people can trod on it. Someone like you. So that's what the meaning of Sangha, or community, is that you discover the path. And you are the maker of the path as far as you are concerned. But having created a path, a lot of you using that path, which you are included, but others also included as well at the same time.
Can the 4th moment be experienced continuously?
Possibility, but then it ceases to become moment.
Does the 4th moment have anything to do with samadhi?
With the what?
Samadhi. What is?
Samadhi?
Can you relate those 2 terms? Samadhi.
Samaya? Huh?
Samadhi.
Samadhi.
As in savikalpa and nirvikalpa.
Samadhi. Basically not. Maybe the 4th moment is the maker of samadhi experience, producer of it, creator of it. But as far as 4th moment is concerned, it has nothing to do with the samadhi as such particularly. It's a state of clarity. The samadhi talks in terms of subtle involvement, but sense of 4th moment is not particular involvement as such. It is actual recognition of things that are taking place on the spot directly. So it seems to be different than samadhi from that point of view.
When you were talking about the 4th moment, and then the sense of the world constantly giving reminders, and the sense of being faced with a challenging attitude on all sides, sounds like that could become kind of paranoid, or there be some possibility there for...
Did you say paranoid?
Paranoid, yeah. Or that could get a very heavy situation. And I was wondering if is there some wisdom about handling that or how to approach that?
Well, paranoia at this point is a reminder I don't see any problems with that, particularly. And I don't see why we have to even up or smooth out, particularly. Paranoia is rugged and raw, sharp. And the fourth moment is also rugged and raw and sharp. And we can work directly both of them together. So we don't have to try to make sure that what we're doing is okay and good, particularly, and we just attack it. We just get into it and do it. So the question of paranoia or schizophrenia doesn't exist actually at this point. And the question is that you just do it. Involve yourself into it and just do it. And let's forget about those fucking words.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Maybe we should close this point talking about the fucking words.